This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Parshas Chukas that talks about the Parah Adumah begins Zois Chukas HaTorah. By the way, it's very interesting. The Gemara says in Chagiga, Chavraya Hayamadakin Begalila, that there's a question. When was the last time we had the Parah Adumah? Until when did we have the Parah Adumah? Till the end of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? No. I believe the Mishnah Lamelech is Medayik. In the Gemara in Chagiga, the Gemara says, Chavraya Hayamadakin Begalila, the Tamil Chachamim in the Galil would purify themselves. They would purify their oil, they would purify their wine. Purify themselves with what? How would they purify themselves with? They were Tamei Meis. So Mishnah Lamelech says, we see even the Amoraim had the Parah Adumah. The Chida writes, very interesting, Chida writes that what's the reason why Bizman Hazeh we can't reach such high levels like the Amoram, right? The Amoram, they could be Machayim Mesim. What's Pshat? We're so limited. We can't, says the Chida, the main reason is because we're Tamei Meis, and that holds us back spiritually. In fact, the Chida says, so how did the Arizal reach such a high Madrega? He says, Libi Aymerli, my heart tells me that the Arizal, Eliyahu Hanavi came to him and gave him from the ashes of the Parah Adumah. Okay. Any event.
That is even his guesses.
Libi Aymerli. Yeah, that's what his heart tells him. Yeah. Anyway.
Ukraine to do all the whole thing.
So very interesting. But Parshas Chukas begins, Eliyahu Hanavi was a Kohen, right? Pinchas. Right? The Gemara in Bava has a kasha. What's Eliyahu Hanavi doing in the Beis HaKvaros? Because of Kohen, right? So the Gemara, the Parsha begins, Zois Chukas HaTorah. And the Mefarshim wonder, what do you mean Zois Chukas HaTorah? I should say Zois Chukas HaTorah. We're not about to learn the whole Torah. We're talking about one limited specificness. So the mitzvah of Parah Adumah should say Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is the statute of the Parah Adumah. What's Zois Chukas HaTorah? Well, why are we comparing the Parah Adumah to the whole Torah? The Gemara in Kedushin tells us in Aflam and Aleph, Shalu es Rabbi Lezer. They asked Rabbi Lezer, Ad Heichan Kibbud Avaim. How far-reaching is the mitzvah of Kibbud Avaim? How far do you have to go to honor your father and mother? Amar Lahem. So Rabbi Lezer said, Tzuru, go ahead and see Ma'asai v'kechavim echad la'aviv ba'ashkelon. What a certain guy did for his father in Ashkelon. V'dama ben Nesina Shemai. His name was Dama ben Nesina. Bikesh mimenu chachamim avanim la'ephod. The Chachamim asked from him stones from the ephod, and they said this guy had very precious stones that could be used for the ephod. Actually, the Yushalmi says that it wasn't a stone from the ephod, it was a stone from the Chayshen, the Yushalmi says, and the Yushalmi even tells us which stone it was. Yashpeh, which was a stone of Binyamin, and they were offering to pay him 600,000 gold coins. Rav Kahana Masni b'shmainim ribai. Rav Kahana says 800,000 coins. And the key was placed under the head of his father. He didn't wake him up. He had the opportunity to make 600,000 gold coins, 800,000 gold coins, and despite all of that, he did not wake up his father.
But they could have waited.
What?
They could have waited.
When a guy sleeps, you don't want to wait till he wakes up. Okay.
Such a precious question.
Lashana Acheres, the next year, Nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Scharai. God rewarded him, Shanol Deloi Parah Adumah. A Parah Adumah was born to him. The schar of Kibbud Avaim was Parah Adumah be'edra. Here, Parah Adumah was born. Nichnas L'chachmei Yisrael Etzai. Of course, we always need a Parah Adumah, right? The Mishnah says, throughout history, there have only been 9 Parah Adumahs. The 10th one we'll have when Mashiach comes. So it's a very expensive item. So Nichnas L'chachmei Yisrael Etzai, the Chachamim came to buy it off him, Amar Lahem. So the guy says, look, I know if I would charge you any amount of money, you would buy it. Don't worry, I'm not going to charge you more money than you would have been willing to pay for that stone of the ephod. Amar Lahem, Yodei b'chem shemani m'vakish mikam kama mishrolim atem noisnim. I know that if you would ask me for all the money in the world, you would give it to me. Ella in ani m'vakish mikem, ella oisai mamayin shehifsiduhu b'shvil kvad abba. I only ask of you that you should pay me the money that I had to lose because I honored my father and I did not sell you the stone. Okay.
This is the biggest lie that he was a Yid, by the way. He was a guy.
Yeah.
Because any Yid would have said, you pay.
So very interesting. Why is this individual warned? Why is he rewarded with the Parah Adumah? Of all things God could reward this guy for fulfilling the mitzvah of Kibbut Avim, why dafka is he rewarded with the Parah Adumah? After all, if you think about it, what is the most logical mitzvah that we have?
Kibbut Avim.
In a way, Kibbut Avim is the quintessential mitzvah sichli, the most logical mitzvah we have. Even Goyim understand you have to honor your father and mother. They brought you into the world. They took care of you when you're young. They gave you everything you have. It's a logical mitzvah. So Hashem rewards the guy for fulfilling the mitzvah of Kibbut Avim with what? With a Parah Adumah, the mitzvah in the Torah that makes the least sense. The one mitzvah which is the quintessential chayk. The mitzvah that Rashi says the goyim are moinim. They insult us about that. They say, what are you doing? You're taking a red cow, you're burning it, you're using the ashes to purify people who became impure, and it's metameas tahirim, right, or mataras atmeim. Doesn't make any sense. So why is it? Why would Hashem specifically reward this guy for kibbut avayim with the mitzvah of paradim, with the Parah Adumah? Okay. B'chlal we have to understand in the sequence of the Chumash, why is the mitzvah of Parah Adumah specifically mentioned in Parshas Chukas in the middle of Sefer Bamidbar? Right. After all, Parah Adumah is for what kind of halachos? Tumah v'tara, pure. That belongs in Sefer Vayikra. Sefer Vayikra teach the laws of Kaihanim, the laws of ritual. It's out of place, right? So the Ramban says, really, v'ha Parsha is tashlim b'taras haKaihanim. This mitzvah is really the completion of the laws of Kaihanim. So what's it doing here? The Nichtav Akan, it's written over here, because at the end of Kairach, it talks about the Matnas Kahuna, the 24 Matnas Kahuna. The Nichtav Akan, Acha Matnas Kahuna, Lomar, Shegam Taharasim Shal Yisrael Al Yedei Kohen Tiyah, that the process of Tara through the Parah Adumah needs to be done through the Kaihanim. In other words, really it should be in Sefer Vayikra. Why is the Parah Adumah mentioned Dafka in this week's Parsha, in Parshas Chukas? It immediately follows the end of Kairach, which talks about the gifts given to the Kaihanim, to teach that this procedure has to be done by the Kaihanim. Okay. Chizkuni adds, interesting thing, that at the end of the Parshas Kairach talks about all the people who died by Magefa, the 14,700 people that died at the Magefa, and the Adas Kairach, and therefore there were many, many Jews who became tameh from what happened with Kairach, and therefore they needed the ashes of the Parah Adumah. So in fact, this is a very relevant halacha. The Chizkuni writes at the end, the Afa Pikei Nichtav Kan, Lefi Shahayu Mehem Tmei Mesim Imachlakusei Shel Kairach. There were many Jews who became tameh from the machlokes with Kairach. So therefore, it makes sense that these laws are written dafka over here. We're gonna what?
They never touched. They said Korach separated, and the earth got swallowed. They swallowed them up. They never really.
But you had people that died by Magefa. Okay. They needed people to bury them. So you had people who were tamei mesim from the machlokes of Kairach.
The Ran Noshim, they weren't.
Right, but they weren't swallowed. The fire came down from Shemayim that killed the 250 plus people Magefa. Okay. In Yana Diyama. He knew we were learning Harias, right? Okay.
Please, I'm not asking these questions.
It's okay.
It's not to say anything. Only was that take it all.
It's okay.
It's all right.
Very interesting. We're going to try to offer another reason, Rabbi Say, why the Hemshech Hadvarim, the connection between the end of Kairach and the beginning of Chukas with Parah Adumah. Now, very interesting. Even though the mitzvah of Parah Adumah appears in Parshas Chukas, this is not the first time that Hashem commanded us about the Parah Adumah. We find already in Parshas V'Shalach, at Marah, after Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim, the pasuk says, "Vayitzak al Hashem." They cried out to Hashem, "Vayireu Hashem eitz." Hashem showed them, right? Remember in Marah, they had nothing to drink. They were thirsty. "Vayireu Hashem eitz." God showed them the tree. "Vayashlich al hamayim." He threw it into the water. "Vayimtiku hamoyim." The water became sweet. "Sham samloi chayku mishpat." There they placed for him a law and a statute. "V'sham nisahu," and there they were tested. Okay, that's what the pasuk says. That already in Marah, when they had nothing to drink, what does the pasuk say? "Sham samloi chayk they were given a chayk, u'mishpat, v'sham nisahu. What is this chayk? What is the mishpat? Says Rashi, Sham samlai chayk, be'mara nasan lohem miktsas parshiyai shel Torah. In Mara already, before the Torah was given Sinai, right? 50 days later. At Mara, they were given certain parshas of the Torah to learn. What were they given? Shabbos, number 1. Parah Adumah, number 2. Dinin, monetary laws. You hear this? Even before the Torah was given on Har Sinai, they were given 3 things. They were given Shabbos, the mitzvah of Shabbos. They were given the mitzvah of Parah Adumah. They were given Dinim.
In what menu would this happen?
What?
In what menu did this happen? They were given at this time all of this.
At Mara, Moshe Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe taught it to Klal Yisrael. Now we have to understand, what does this mean? They were given Shabbos, they were given Parah Adumah, and they were given Dinim. Because if you look in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, if you look at number 8, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says we were actually given 10 mitzvahs. What were they? Look at number 8, Vatanya, Esther mitzvah, Nitzavu Yisrael b'Mara. Klal Yisrael was given 10 mitzvahs at Mara. Sheva shekiblu aleihem b'nei Noach. The Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. The haisifu aleihen dinin. That's consistent with Rashi. Shabbos. That's consistent with Rashi. The kibbut avim. That ain't consistent with Rashi. Does Rashi say kibbut avim? No. What does Rashi say?
Parah Adumah.
Parah Adumah. You hear this? Rashi says Parah Adumah. The Gemara says kibbut avim. Now, how do we know? Dinim d'chsev shamsam loy chayku mishpat. Dinim. Shabbos v'kibbut avim, because it says in the Aser Sadibros, kasher tzivcha, like you already commanded. When Hashem gave us kibbut avim and Shabbos in the Aser Sadibros, Hashem says, keep Shabbos, keep kibbut avim, like I already commanded you. When did Hashem already command us about Shabbos and kibbut avim? At Mara. But here we have a major problem. Rashi says that at Mara we already given Parah Adumah. The Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say one word about Parah Adumah. The Gemara says kibbut avim. So another question is the following. This Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked in this week's Parsha, why in the world would Hashem command Bnei Yisrael about Parah Adumah at Mara? Wait a second. To bring the Parah Adumah, where does it have to be brought? In the Oyel Moed. There was no Oyel Moed. The Torah wasn't given yet. You need to do it b'pischoi shel Heichal, the opening of the Heichal. There was no Heichal. Why would Hashem give Klal Yisrael a mitzvah that has no practical relevance? Why would He give us the mitzvah of Parah Adumah? You need a Mishkan for the Parah Adumah. There was no Mishkan. So if Hashem, I can understand why Hashem gave us Shabbos before the Torah was given. Shabbos gives testimony that God created the world in 7 days. This is a Yisodos HaEmunah. This is the fundamentals of Judaism. So before we get to Torah, we have to realize God created the world in 6 days, rested on the 7th day. But Parah Adumah, that's an introduction to the Torah? We can't even fulfill the mitzvah of Parah Adumah. That Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asks in Parshas Chukas. Another major question is that the Maram Shik asks in his commentary on Pirkei Avos, and that is, why would Hashem command us about Parah Adumah before the Torah was given? What do you need a Parah Adumah for? Someone who's Tameh. Before the Torah was given, there is no such thing as Tumah V'Tara. There's no such thing as Tumah V'Tara. Parah Adumah is the one. Parah Adumah you should give after the Torah was given. You're giving it before the Torah was given? It doesn't make any sense. It's completely irrelevant. You have no Oyel Moed. You have no Pischei Shel Heichal. You have no Tumah V'Tara. What's Hashem? I can understand, like the Gemara says, kibbut avim. Before you accept the Torah, first keep, laws of menschlichkeit. But Parah Adumah, you take the one mitzvah that makes no sense, right? Even Shlomo HaMelech could not fathom the Parah Adumah, right? What does Shlomo HaMelech say? Amarti achkama v'hirechaika mimeni. So why would Hashem take the one mitzvah that doesn't make sense, that's irrelevant? You have no Oyel Moed, you have no Heichal, you have no Tumah V'Tara. Before you get the Torah, you got to have this one. Parah Adumah? It's the last mitzvah you need to teach Klal Yisrael. And because of many of these questions...
So what's the answer?
Okay, so let's see. The Sefer, the Rav Baruch Epstein, the son of the Aruch HaShulchan, the Baal Torah Tamima, he wrote a Sefer called Makar Baruch, and one of his major themes is that the printers have destroyed all of our Sfarim. And whenever you have a question, the answer is always, it's a Ta'as Sofer. It's a mistake. The printer's made a mistake. And he uses this trick to answer this question. You see, he says, Rashi can't argue on the Gemara. The Gemara says, Kibbut Av Ha'im, doesn't say Parah Adumah. Originally, Rashi's not going to argue. What Rashi said was, Kaf Aleph. You know what Kaf Aleph stands for? Kibbut Av. That's what Rashi said.
But Kaf Aleph in his Parsha?
Yeah, what Rashi says in his Parsha was Kaf Aleph. Rashi Tevas, Kibbut Av. What happened? The printer either intentionally or accidentally changed the Kaf. If you take the Kaf with the dot in it, the dot, sometimes if you can make a little connection between the dot to the Kaf, it looks like a Pei. So the printer switched it from Kaf Aleph to Pei Aleph. The next printer came along and said, oh, Pei Aleph. Pei Aleph is Parah Adumah. But really it was Kibbut Av Ha'im. That's what it really said, like the Gemara says. Because why would Hashem give Parah Adumah before the Torah was given? There's no Tumah V'Tara, there's no Heichal, there's no Mishkan. You don't need the Parah Adumah. But the printers, they switched from Kaf Aleph to Pei Aleph, and then the next printers read Pei Aleph Parah Adumah. And that's where this whole Parah Adumah business came from. Take a look at number 9. This is quote number 10 as well. Right? This is something the Targum does very often. For instance, you have on Shabbos, Magdil and Migdal, right?
Yeah.
So the Targum says there's no difference between Magdil and Migdal. It's the same thing. What happened? One of them comes from Tehillim. One of them comes from Shmuel Beis. So what happened was the printer wrote Shin Beis, Shmuel Beis. The next printer came along and read it to me in Shin Beis Shabbos. So the next printer made up that on the weekday you say Magdil, and the Shabbos you say Migdal. But there's no difference. No difference. But it's because the printer was just showing Magdil is in Tehillim, Migdal is in Shmuel Beis, and then they thought Shin Beis stood for Shabbos. By the way, everybody shlugs up this Tartmima because there's no such thing as Shmuel Beis. It's made up by the Christians in the King James edition of the Bible. There's not something that we had in the early editions of Svarim, Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis. So,
One has a joke about that.
this is a controversial approach to say, everything is Ta'as Sofer. The Gra says, there's a famous one, this Gra says, it says, Kol ma she'omer lecha Baal Habayis aseh, chutz mitzeh. Everything the Baal Habayis tells you have to do except for its say. Unless he asks you to leave. Once he asks you to leave, right, he's not the Baal Habayis anymore. He's not your Baal, so now you don't have to listen to him. The Gra says, no, it's chutz mi tzadi aleph with 2 apostrophes. Tzadi aleph stands for tzadis, or whatever a Baal Habayis tells you, you gotta listen, except if he tells you to do something else. Okay. But that's what the Tartmima says. Right, he says, look at number 9. The Mefarshim struggle to find the source for Rashi that Shenitztavu b'Mara al mitzvahs Parah Adumah. That at Mara we were commanded on Parah Adumah. But Oishe b'Gemara Sanhedrin Sham, because if you look in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, uv'mechilta mavur Shenitztavu b'Mara al mitzvah Shabbos b'Kibbut Av Adinim. And we know what the source for Shabbos is, Kasher Tzivcha. We know what the source for Kibbut Av Ha'im is, Kasher Tzivcha. We know what the source of Dinim is, Chayku Mishpat. But Parah Adumah, there's no source in Chazal that Hashem commanded us to Parah Adumah. Another question is, why would Rashi leave out Kibbut Av Ha'im and stick in, fine. You want to tell me there's a Makar for Parah Adumah? Fine. You'll find a source. But why would Rashi take out Kibbut Av Ha'im? Says the Tartmima, but everybody's wrong. Why is everyone wrong? Achnala me'al kol safek kal. There is no doubt. Ki neshtar b'vakan tos b'tevei Rashi. There's a mistake in Rashi. Gam ken al pi Rashi tevos. Why? Shaya kasa b'Rashi v'chaf aleph. Originally Rashi wrote the letters chaf aleph. Shepisroinoi b'Rashi tevos v'kibbut av. Uli echad hamatikim, and then a printer came along, me'eza siba, for whatever reason. Oy mishat nefesh, either he intentionally, carelessness, he nidme ois chaf lois pei, kazeh, upei aleph, he thought the kaf looked like a pei. V'danhu, and that's what he decided. Oy matik sha'achrav, or a later printer, kizeh rashi tevos u'Parah Adumah. V'yafarish oisham mefurish kain, And this strange mistake emerged. In other words, Rashi is not arguing on the Gemara. The Gemara says Kibbut Aveim. Rashi wanted to write Kibbut Aveim. He tried to. He did his best to get things right. It's all the printer's fault. It's all the printer's fault. Says the Torah to me, I can't understand. Because the Ramban made the same mistake when the Ramban quotes over Rashi. He quotes Rashi, says that at Mara Parah Adumah was Nitztava. And this says the Torah to me, I can't understand why the Ramban would make such a simple error and not understand that Rashi never meant to write Parah Adumah. Rashi meant to write Kibbut Aveim. Says Rav Baruch Epstein, I'll bring you a raya that it's a printing error. What's the raya? Because we have a Rashi in this week's Parsha that gives us the reason for Parah Adumah. Let's take a look. Reason for Parah Adumah? How could there be a reason for Parah Adumah? We know Shlomo HaMelech didn't know the reason for Parah Adumah. Says the Makar Baruch, look at Rashi in this week's Parsha. Look at number 11. Rashi quotes from his Rebbe, Rav Moshe Hadarshan. Umedrish agada hetakti misoidoi shel Rav Moshe Hadarshan. Says Rashi, I will tell you a medrash that was copied over from the Sefer of Moshe Hadarshan. Now we know there are various halachos of Parah Adumah. Number one, the Parah Adumah the Jews had to pay for with their own money. The Parah Adumah had to be red. Parah Adumah had to be without a mum. Parah Adumah can never have had a yoke on it. Parah Adumah had to be performed not by Aaron, by Elazar. Parah Adumah had to be burned. You needed 3 species with the Parah Adumah. You needed to preserve the ashes of the Parah Adumah for all generations. Why the Parah Adumah was metame the tahirim and metaher the tmeim? Why does the Parah Adumah have all these interesting halachos? Says Rav Moshe Hadarshan. I'll tell you the reason. It is a kapara for the chet ha'egal. It's an atonement for the sin of an egal. Right? What happens? You invite a kid over to your house to play with your children. He messes up the whole house. He takes the chocolate chips. He melts them. He smears them all over the carpet. So what are you going to do? You can get angry at the kid, go clean it? No. You call the kid's mother. You say, look what a bad kid you raised. No manners. Come over to my house right now. I want you to take, some carpet cleaner and scrub it out of my carpet. Who's responsible when a kid makes a mistake? You call the mother. The mother has to wipe away the mess. The egel was a baby calf. Who has to wipe away the mess of the baby? The parah, the mother cow. The Parah Adumah is an atonement for the chet ha'egal. Parah Adumah, says Rashi, Mashal leben shivcha. It's a parable to the child of the maidservant Shetinef Paltin Shamelech. Number 11. The child messes up, ruins the palace. Amru, so what do we say? Tava yimai, bring the mother. V'tekaneach hatzoa, clean up the mess. Kach tavai parah, so too, bring the cow, u'techaper al egel, to atone for the egel. Says Rashi, why does it have to be red? Because what color is sin associated with? Red, right? Im yadimu katoila. Why does the Parah Adumah have to be tamima without a mum? Because before the Jews sinned with the chet ha'egal, they were without a mum. Why does the Parah Adumah have to have no yoke? You have to take, right, with no yoke. Because when the Jews sinned with the chet ha'egal, they removed the Oil Malchus Shamayim, the yoke of heaven. Why does Elazar have to do the Parah Adumah? You need a Kohen. Just like Aaron made the Parah Adumah, you need a Kohen. Just like Aaron made the Egel, you need a Kohen to perform the Parah Adumah. But not Aaron himself. Why not Aaron himself? Ein kategar, nasa sanegar. Aaron made the Egel, you can't have him. Says Rashi, why do you have to burn the Parah Adumah? Like they burn the Egel. Why do you need 3 species? You need cedar wood, you need hyssop grass, you need a crimson thread. Kenega, the 3,000 people who were killed at the Egel. Why do you need the tallest of all trees, the erez, the cedar, and the lowest of all growth, the izov? Because in order to do tshuva, you need to lower yourself. If you're high up in the sky, you need to lower yourself. Why do you need to preserve the ashes of the Parah Adumah for all generations? The same way we have a tradition that whenever God punishes the Jewish people, uviyayin pakti ufakadati, there's always mixed in with it some of the sin of the Egel. The sin of the Egel is preserved for all generations. Why is the Egel matame all who deal with it? Why is the Parah Adumah, matame all who deal with it? The same way the Egel was matame all who made it. And just like they were mataher from the Egel with the ashes of the Egel, so too we are metaher with the ashes of the Parah Adumah. Says Rav Moshe Hadarshan, the big mystery of the Parah Adumah has been uncoded. We understand every halacha of the Parah Adumah. It's a kapara for the chet ha'egel. Comes along the Torah Tamima, and he says, if the purpose of Parah Adumah, it's a kapara for the egel, then when the Jewish people were at Marah, they never sinned with the egel. There was no egel. So why in the world would Hashem give them the mitzvah of Parah Adumah if the whole purpose of Parah Adumah is a kapara for the chet ha'egel? They had not sinned with the egel yet. Therefore, there is no doubt that when Rashi says Parah Adumah, it's a mistake. It's a printing error. Rashi never meant Parah Adumah. The whole reason for Parah Adumah is for the chet ha'egel. Why would God give us the mitzvah of Parah Adumah before the chet ha'egel? And therefore what? Therefore, we have to say it's a printing error in Rashi.
Why can't you say that he creates the before Mata?
So we might have to say that, but that is the argument of the Torah Tamima, that there's unquestionably this is a printing error. Comes along Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky and he says, I'm sorry, but the Torah Tamima forgot about something very obvious, and that is there's another Rashi in Chumash, Rashi in Parshas Mishpatim. Rashi in Parshas Mishpatim tells us something very interesting. Look at number 12. Vayavay Moshe Vayisaper la'am eis kol divrei Hashem veis kol ha'mishpatim vayan kol ha'am kol echad vayomru kol hadvarim asher diber Hashem na'aseh. Right? Moshe came, he told the people all the words of Hashem and all the mishpatim. What are the mishpatim? Look at number 13. Veis kol ha'mishpatim Sheva mitzvah shenitztavu b'nei Noach, the Zayin mitzvahs b'nei Noach, b'Shabbos, v'kibbut avayim, u'Parah Adumah, v'dinin shenitnu lahem b'mara. So very says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, without quoting any names, there's a certain commentary who wanted to say that Rashi in Parshas B'Shalach is a printing error, and that the letters Kaf Aleph were mistaken for Pei Aleph, and then they were read to mean Parah Adumah. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, that is wrong, because Rashi explicitly in Parshas Mishpatim says both Kibbut Avayim and Parah Adumah. So what printing error emerged over there? Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, therefore he concludes that this Mefaresh, without saying who it is, obviously we know who it is, we learned who it is, this Mefaresh is wrong. Look at number 14. Perish Rashi, Zayin Mitzvah Shenitztavu B'nei Noach, V'Shabbos, V'Kibbut Avayim, U'Parah Adumah, V'dinin Shenitnu Lahem B'mara. V'hinei Gam Kan Hizker Rashi Parah Adumah. Here also Rashi mentions Parah Adumah. Kamashis Girel Parshas B'Shalach, like he mentioned in Parshas B'Shalach. Udeloi Kafi Masha Shamati Shata Sofer B'Ferish Rashi Le'el. Not like I heard somebody wanted to say that there's a printing error in Rashi. Shahaya Kasav V'Chaf Aleph. V'nin Mela Kosev HaKaf Kapei, and the one who wrote the Kaf thought it was a Pei. Uvemakam Rashi Tevis Kaf Av Shu Kibbut Av Tzayin Pei Av Shu Parah Adumah. Shaharei Kan Moina Shteyan, because here Rashi counts both of them. Bein Kibbut Avayim Ubein Parah Adumah. And therefore, says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, there is no doubt that Rashi meant to write Parah Adumah. Why does the Gemara in Sanhedrin not make mention of Parah Adumah? Says Rabbi Yaakov, the Gemara in Sanhedrin is only listing the mitzvos that are Negeya L'maisa. The Gemara in Sanhedrin is only listing those mitzvos that have practical relevance. Kibbut Avayim, Dinim, Shabbos. But Parah Adumah, like we mentioned, there is no Tumah V'Tara, there's no Ayom Mayed, there's no Heichal, it had no halachic relevance, and therefore the Gemara in Sanhedrin does not enumerate it. So why does Rashi mention it if the Gemara doesn't mention it? Says Rabbi Yaakov, an amazing thing. Look carefully at the Lashon of Rashi. B'Mara Nasan Lohem Miktsas Parshas Shel Torah Sheyisasku Bahem. Does Rashi say God gave us these mitzvos to perform? No. He gave us these mitzvos to learn about. In other words, Hashem selected certain mitzvos to learn about, not to perform. So now we have to understand, why would Hashem, of all the Parshas in the Torah that God wanted us to think about and learn about, why would He specifically give us the mitzvah of Parah Adumah to learn about? What lesson of Parah Adumah was so critical that we needed to learn about the Parah Adumah even before the Torah was given. By the way, just to add support to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky from a Rishon, the Baal HaTurim explicitly in Parshas B'Shalach tells us the word, right? Sham, Sam, Chloi, Chayk, Mishpat. Sham is the gematria Parah Adumah. The word Sham, 340, is Match Parah Adumah, indicating very clearly, not like the Torah Tamima, that at Mara, God gave us a mitzvah, Parah Adumah. Number 15, the Baal HaTurim. So now we have to wonder a number of things. Think about the following. Before the Torah was given, God gave us a few mitzvahs. Shabbos, that I don't have a problem with. Shabbos is maybe the most important mitzvah. That is the testimony that Hashem created the world. But think about the other two mitzvahs. Kibbud Av V'Em and Parah Adumah. The most logical mitzvah and the most illogical mitzvah. He packs them together and Hashem says, learn these two mitzvahs. Why dafka these two mitzvahs? And like the Emes Yaakov asked, we have no Oyel Ma'id, we can't perform it. Like the Maram Shik asked, there's no Tumah B'Tara. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Look at number 16. You know what the explanation is? Like Rashi told us in Mishalach. Nasan lohem miktzas parshiyos shel Torah sheyisasku b'hem. He gave us some of the parshiyos in the Torah to be involved in. Keloimar, meaning to say, Iker hakavana hoisa limud haTorah b'li kiyam hamitzvos. The purpose over here was the learning and not the fulfillment.
Not the what?
Not the fulfillment of it. So the question is, what are we learning exactly? Skip a line. Move on Hetav. Now, according to what I said, we can understand. Madua bachar b'shvil zeh dafka Parshas Parah Adumah. You know why? Before we accept the Torah, the most important lesson that we need to learn is we don't keep the mitzvos because they make sense to us. Because they're logical, because they're reasonable, because they make us healthy, we have a benefit. We keep the mitzvos for one reason. Because Hashem commanded. Hashem gezerah gazarti. Chayku milfanai ve'ein rishus laharach. When Hashem is about to give the Torah to Klal Yisrael, so Klal Yisrael probably thinks, oh, this is going to be a very excellent body of laws. It's going to help keep our society in check, and it's going to keep us, it's going to teach us how to deal with our fellow man and how to live reasonably. No, that's not why we keep the mitzvos. Tikkun olam, right? Klal Yisrael needs to learn, before they get all the mitzvos in the Torah, that we don't keep the mitzvos because they make sense to us. So what does Hashem say? This is, we're adding on our own, I'll give you two mitzvahs. I'm going to give you the mitzvah of Kibbud Av V'Em, the mitzvah that you understand more than any other mitzvah. I'm going to give you the mitzvah of Parah Adumah, the one mitzvah that makes no sense. In your eyes, you need to keep these mitzvahs in the exact same way. Of course, you honor your father. You want to show honor to him. You want to show hakaras hatov. You want to respect because it makes sense. But ultimately, that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because this is what Hashem said. This is the hakdama to the entire Torah. This is the introduction to the whole Torah. Before we receive the Torah, we need to learn the lesson that we don't keep mitzvahs because they make sense. Look. What?
It's like a hakdama to Nasa v'Nishma. We're doing it and then we understand.
Okay, good. Look what he says. Share mi Parsha zeh anu lameidim she'ein anu mekaimim es mitzvahs Hashem mishum she'anu mevinu ma'asam. B'sechlenu. We don't keep them because they make sense. They nirim lanu kahagunim unechonim, and they seem just and reasonable. Ela adarabba. Kan yesh lanu mitzvah shekal kula nitna rak b'shvil hagzera gazarti. Here we have a mitzvah that the only reason for it is because Hashem said so. So we keep it nevertheless. This is a very appropriate introduction to the rest of the Torah. Because even the rest of the Torah, even if we understand it, that's not why we keep it. We know in the Parsha of Parah Adumah, we say the following. Zois ha-Torah Adam ki yamos ba'oiha. What is the Gemara darshan? Ein Torah niknis ela b'mi she meimis atzmai aleha. You hear? We have a drasha. The Gemara tells us that the Torah cannot be sustained only in someone who literally is Mosar Nefesh for the Torah. You hear, right? The Gemara tells us. It's a drasha in the Gemara in Brachos. Daf Samach Gimel. You're almost up to there. Right? The Gemara in Masechta Brachos tells us, Adam ki yamas ba'ayel, ein Torah miskayemes el b'mi shemeimis atzmai aleha. that if you want to really understand Torah, you need to give up of yourself. If you're going to learn Torah, on the hammock with the iced tea and the lemon, right, with somebody fanning you,
Not bad.
it's geschmack, but the Torah doesn't have, is not sustained that way. You have to, something a little thirsty, it might not feel good at the moment, but that's how you acquire the Torah. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says, what does that got to do with Parah Adumah? The one place in the whole Torah where it tells you need to push yourself, you need to be Moser Nefesh a little bit, you need to hold up your eye. By the Parah Adumah? It should say it in Shema. When it talks about the mitzvah of learning Torah, it should say, by the way, how you have to learn Torah. Zois ha-Torah adam ki yamas ba'ayah. Says Rabbi Yaakov, no, this is the place. You know what? Because we've just learned that the Torah is not a system of logical dictates. It's not a system of rules that make sense. These are laws that are lamala miseichel enushi. They are above and beyond human comprehension. They're chukim. These are godly, divine commandments. They're not subject to the laws of the universe. And to understand them, you need to deal with them in a way where you rise above the physical parameters of life. Comes Rav Moshe Feinstein in the Darash Moshe, and he says the following. That is why the beginning of the Parsha says, Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is not just Zois Chukas HaTorah, a limited, isolated statute. This is a guideline for Kol HaTorah Kula. Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is an attitude we have to the entire Torah. And that is, we have to understand and view all the mitzvahs in the Torah as if they have no reason. Says Rav Moshe an interesting thing. We know the Torah says you can't take too many wives, right? Because they might turn you away from Hashem. What did Shlomo HaMelech do? Shlomo HaMelech said, the reason why you're not allowed to have too many wives is because they're going to turn you away from Hashem, but I won't be turned. Says Rav Moshe, what was Shlomo HaMelech's mistake? What, he misjudged himself? Really, he thought he wouldn't be turned, but really he mistakenly was, he misjudged himself? He overestimated himself? Rav Moshe says, no, that wasn't the mistake. He judged himself absolutely correctly that he would not be turned. You know what his mistake was? Even when the Torah gives you the reason does not define when the mitzvah applies. You're right. You're not allowed to get married to too many wives, and the reason the Torah itself gives is so it doesn't pull away your heart. But for a person who it won't pull away his heart, he's still not allowed to do it. Because even when the Torah gives a reason, the reason does not define the halacha. The reason is what we call, it's part of the Torah. It's another dimension of the mitzvah, but it doesn't govern the mitzvah. What was the mistake of Korach? Korach said, talis shekulei tcheles. If the whole talis is made of tcheles, so what do you need to put a tcheles string on it? If the whole purpose of tcheles is to be reminded of the kisei hakavod, so if the whole talis is made of tcheles, you'll be reminded. What was Korach's mistake? But tzitzis is not to remind you of the kisei hakavod. Korach's mistake was one mistake. Even where the Torah gives you a reason, the reason does not define when the halacha applies. The halacha applies in all situations, even where the reason doesn't apply. Because reasons are merely added, right? If you look in the Sefer HaChinuch, so what's the Sefer HaChinuch? Ta'amim, ta'amei hamitzvos. So we learn ta'amim, the reasons. That's not what the word ta'amim means. Says the Sefer HaChinuch, you know what ta'amim means? Taste. It gives taste to the mitzvah, to understand why we do it. But these are not the reasons. Ultimately, there are no reasons for the mitzvahs. They're all zois chukas haTorah. They're all statutes, So we'd like to suggest that right after the Parsha of Korach, where Korach's blunder was, he thought that mitzvahs have reasons, and where the reasons don't apply, the mitzvah doesn't apply. Hashem says, one second, I got to remind you about something. Zois chukas haTorah. The Parah Adumah, which has no reason and no logic, is not merely a one isolated mitzvah that has no reason. It's Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is the attitude you have to the entire Torah. We do mitzvahs, even the most logical mitzvahs, even a mitzvah like Kibbud Av V'Eim, even a mitzvah like Chesed. We do it not because it makes us feel good, not because we have compassion, and we should have compassion. And we should also do it because it makes sense to us. And we should also honor our Father because of Akar Satayv. But deep down, with the understanding that at the core, we're doing a mitzvah because Hashem commanded us. Shteit geschriben. That's not in Latin, right? So,
If the Goyim have to follow certain mitzvahs, are they obligated to follow them because it's rational, or it's because it's Hashem's word?
So the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, they have to keep because God commanded. But Rav Moshe writes in the Tshuva that Goyim are also commanded to keep mitzvos sichlios.
What?
Rav Moshe writes in the Tshuva that Goyim are also obligated to keep logical mitzvos. The logic of it is an added reason to do it, but it's not the reason to do it. So therefore, we would conclude the Ben Yoyada tries to offers an explanation why this guy was rewarded with the Parah Adumah, but with the Mahalach that we're taking, we would like to explain that this guy is demonstrating that his honor of his father and mother goes beyond just, it makes sense to honor my father, so I'm going to do it. Because the extent that this guy took to honor his father demonstrated that he's not just doing it because of the logic of it, because it makes sense, because it's reasonable. Because maybe you could make the case he could have rationalized, his father would have wanted him to wake him up. Right? Which father? But still, the guy said, this is a halacha. You have to honor your father. This is the will of Hashem. Whether I understand it or not, what's the reward? The reward is the Parah Adumah, the one mitzvah that we don't understand. And this is Zois Chukas HaTorah. This is the attitude we take to the entire Torah. And that is why even before the Torah was given, the one mitzvah Hashem commanded us is Parah Adumah, to teach us that this is the type of mindset we should have to all the mitzvahs in the Torah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.